the other interesting thing that I heard was, I think, a slight slip that wasn't intended for publication, but on this week, Thursday just gone, Michael Portillo was doing a piece about the new railway, the H2, I think it's called, High Speed 2. And
he's been travelling around everywhere, and I see that, yeah.
But as part of his speech, he was asked about politicians who are saying that it's going to destroy their constituencies and it's going to ruin jobs, etc. And this is a guy who is still a very, very prominent politician, even though he no longer works in politics. He's not an MP and hasn't been for 20 odd years. He said, "It is not an MP's job to represent his constituents in Parliament. It is an MP's job to further the national interests of the country and the Parliament."
Oh.
And these are the leaders that we have in power today. So we are told that in our democracy, the job of our MPs is to represent our views in Parliament to make sure that our views and our needs are protected and heard. Now we all know that doesn't happen, and whether by design or by accident, we've been told that they're actually told that that's not what they're allowed to do. Are these really the people we want representing us going forward into the 21st, 22nd century?
No.
As has also been said, there is no way that a smaller party can break through to get any media attention unless you do something drastic, such as strip naked and go running through Westminster.
Any volunteers?
That wouldn't do it.
You have to get 86%.
You've already done it, but you had your clothes on, not here.
To be able to get any media representation, you have to get 86% of your constituency to turn out and actually support you. Most of us haven't even got a single constituency. We're little pockets of a dozen, half a dozen, 30 people in areas up and down the country, but we aren't strong enough and large enough to have a single central office that we can spread out from in the ways that the Labour Party did in the 1800s, that the Liberals did, that the Conservative Party did. Finding people that represent our views is great. Finding people who are willing to put time, money and effort into us is almost impossible. And the media are not going to do anything to help us to do that. So we have to show that we are completely different. The thing that I get told the most often is, well, you're a politician and I don't trust politicians, so I don't even want to know what you've got to say. Or, I like your ideas, I want to see where you are in 2 or 3 years' time. That isn't going to help us. We need to start having campaigns like this that show that we are willing to put aside our party interests, our personal interests, our differences and difficulties, and actually work together for the benefit of the country. That's the only way to show that politics is changing, because people at the top have got no interest in changing things. Last month there was a Ipsos Mori survey of politicians asking them about their wages. They want a 32% increase in their salary. Their £65,000 a year salary plus expenses isn't enough. They want that increasing to at least £86,000 a year. How many people in this room have received a pay rise of 23% this year? Politicians are public servants. They have capped the pay for public servants to 1%. What gives them the right to think that they should be entitled to a 23% pay rise when the rest of the public servants in this country are only entitled to a 1%? When most of us who work in this country are having to take pay cuts just to be able to survive. David Cameron and a few of the Conservatives have been rumoured to say that the welfare bill in this country is so comfortable that the only reason there has been a 123% increase in food banks usage in this country is because people are spending their money on beer and fags. Now this is in a time when we know that every winter 20,000 plus elderly people are dying of hypothermia because they can't afford to feed themselves and heat their houses. When disabled people are dying because they're having their money cut because they're being told they're fit to work when even their own medical experts are telling them they're not. When people are having to put their children into nurseries from 6 a.m. in the morning till 8 a.m. in the evening just to go out and earn minimum wage, to still have to come home and claim benefits to be able to put food on the table. Is this really the Great Britain that we want to be living in the 21st century? Sounds more like medieval Britain to me.
Well, I'm a pensioner now, I'm 68 in April. Well, what David Camden, he gives us a rise. Well, I think you can get an ham sandwich out of Sainsbury's with the money he gives you. He wants to go round there looking himself.
Exactly. David Cameron, when he was brought into office, lauded himself on the fact that he was the father of a disabled child and he knew what disability was.
Yeah.
He claimed disability living allowance for his child. Now his government are taking disability living allowance away from an estimated 120,000 disabled people.
Did that child die, didn't he?
Yeah, that's the
Oh,
one.
yeah.
But you know,
You're
that's sort of beside the point. The point is he claimed something that he thought was valuable while his child was alive, but now it's no longer valuable.
It's gone the other way now,
from other
It's gone the
people.
other way, yeah.
Ian Duncan Smith, his wife had cancer. He praised Macmillan nurses and the health service
That's right.
while his wife was being treated for cancer, and now they're
Yeah.
trying to rip it apart.
Yeah.
It's going to be a two-tier health system. Those that can afford to pay get seen the quickest. Those that don't, we're already hearing stories of glaucoma patients being told that they're not allowed to have eye surgery until they're blind in both eyes,
God.
and then they're only allowed to have surgery on one of their eyes. They can't have both of them cleared. They're only allowed to have the surgery once. People who need hip replacements, who could have a hip replacement done, say, in 6 weeks and be perfectly mobile within a couple of months and have 20 or 30 years of good health left, being told they've got to wait 18 months when the recovery time is going to be a lot longer and a lot less. These really the people that we trust to make the decisions that are in the best interest of us. They bail out the banks, yet they take money from the poor. They destroy the benefit system that they're quite happy to claim themselves when they need it, even though they're on 20, 30, 40,000 pounds a year more than we are. It's time for the politics in this country to get real and to realise that it's only the people on the ground that are ever going to change things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean. Just showing a stark contrast between what special politicians earn, what they want, and what they're prepared to give the rest of us. So I do appreciate that. I'm now going to move on to our next speaker, which is Mr. Lee Holmes of the People's Democratic Party.
Right, thanks. Well, firstly, thanks to the organisers of today's event and actually for the Total Democratic Project as a whole. Obviously coming from the north of England, it's rather difficult for me to be involved. Thanks for finding us a very, very good venue here today and for all the hard work you've put in the project so far. Speaking for the People's Democratic Party, I think from our recent experience, the needs for total democracy to be in action and the need for the none of the above option to be on the ballot paper has never been clearer. We recently stood in the Manchester Central by-election, the aforementioned by-election where the turnout was as low as 18%, the lowest turnout since the Second World War. Now, the point of this campaign is that is not through apathy, that's through discontent, that's through malaise in the British democratic system, and that's through the arrogance of the political class that increasingly dominates our democratic system in the UK. Now, Manchester Central, where we stood, is a case in point. I think it's a very good example of where British democracy is going wrong. Manchester Central is one of the most deprived areas in the country. Even after 13 years of Labour rule, and even after something like 50 or 60 years of having a Labour-controlled local authority there, it has some of the worst levels of deprivation in the entire UK. And yet it is still overwhelmingly a staunch Labour seat. Now, is that because people are happy with Labour? And to some extent it probably is to do with loyalties, long-standing loyalties, and for the fact that Labour possibly does represent the interests of a large number of people in that constituency. But arguably it's also because people don't have a genuine alternative. There is no genuine alternative to Labour in Manchester Central and across whole swathes of the north of England, where I myself am based. And so you end up with, in Manchester Central and across other parts of the north east and the north of England where we've had by-elections recently, you end up with an 18% turnout. In Manchester Central as well, we also ended up with with a huge number of spoiled ballot papers, either blank